Aliens studied an ancient human language for centuries. Until humanity returned, the grand chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as the massive obsidian doors swung open. 3 humans strode confidently into the cavernous space, their simple uniforms stark against the ornate regalia of the 100 alien species seated in rising tiers around them. Ambassador Thomas Reed led the small delegation, his salt and pepper hair cut short, face betraying nothing as thousands of alien eyes scrutinized him. The chamber itself was breathtaking, a vast dome with walls that seemed to shimmer between solid matter and pure energy. Light from 3 different suns streamed through crystal windows, casting rainbow patterns across the floor. Representatives from over 500 worlds occupied their designated sectors, some breathing through specialized apparatus, others floating in containment fields of exotic gases. Species 7219, designation human. You stand accused of deliberate deception against the Galactic Council, announced High Arbiter Vrax, his translucent appendages shimmering with bioluminescent anger. The massive alien's voice boomed without any visible amplification technology. For centuries, we studied what we believed were the transmissions of a dead civilization. We mourned your extinction. We built academies dedicated to your memory. The enormous viewscreen behind him activated, displaying ancient television broadcasts, radio signals, and fragments of Earth languages that had been traveling through space for centuries. Yet here you stand, very much alive, having concealed your continued existence and technological advancement from us. Explain yourselves before judgment is rendered. Murmurs rippled through the assembly, some curious, others openly hostile. The humans were supposed to be extinct, a fascinating historical footnote, not a living species seeking recognition. Ambassador Reed stepped forward, seemingly calm despite the gravity of the situation. Rather than speaking into the translator device provided, he opened his mouth and addressed the council directly, in perfect galactic standard. Honorable Council, Reed continued, his voice echoing through the stunned silence. We cannot be guilty of deception when we were never properly asked. Your scholars studied our ancient broadcast but made a critical error in translation. What you interpreted as the end was merely to be continued. The chamber erupted in shock. High Arbiter Vrax's appendages froze mid-ripple. Reed gestured to his colleagues who activated a small device. A holographic display materialized, showing side-by-side comparisons of alien translations alongside correct human meanings. Red highlights illuminated thousands of critical mistakes. Your most esteemed linguist, Dr. Zul, built his entire career on a fundamental misunderstanding of our syntax. Everything that followed was based on this flawed foundation. The named alien scholar stood abruptly from his seat, forearms gesticulating wildly. Impossible, he protested. I spent lifetimes decoding your dead language. Reed smiled thinly. Then perhaps you should explain why your translation of our extinction event perfectly matches the closing credits of a fictional entertainment program called Friends, which, incidentally, continued for many seasons after your alleged final transmission. He produced an ancient data device and inserted it into the council's system. The original broadcast played alongside Zul's translation, devastating in its implications. In the year 2089, the last unencrypted global broadcast from Earth faded into the cosmic background radiation. Humanity had not perished. They had simply moved to more secure communications as they expanded beyond their home planet. The broadcasts continued to travel outward through space at light speed, carrying with them fragments of human culture, language, and entertainment. 78 years later, the meritocracy of Jaxal, a technologically advanced species from a star system 200 light-years from Earth, intercepted these signals during a routine survey of empty space. What they found astonished them. Evidence of an intelligent species that had apparently reached the threshold of space exploration before mysteriously falling silent. It is confirmed. First scholar, reported junior analyst Cree. These signals originated from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star in sector 8722. The civilization appears to have been thriving, then suddenly ceased all transmissions. First scholar Tiro contemplated the findings. An extinction event, perhaps? A war, disease? Or did they destroy themselves as so many do at this stage of development? Unknown, but the signals contain rich linguistic and cultural data. We have already begun preliminary translation. That discovery led to the establishment of the Human Studies Academy on Jaxal Prime. For decades, scholars from across their territory worked to decode the human languages, analyze their cultures, and piece together the story of the species that had seemingly vanished just as it reached for the stars. As the Jaxal expanded their own interstellar influence, they shared their discovery with other species. The mysterious humans became a subject of intense academic interest throughout the sector. When the Jaxal joined the Galactic Council a century later, they brought their human studies with them. Professor Zul, a brilliant linguist from the methane-breathing Chin Collective, quickly distinguished himself in this emerging field. His groundbreaking work, Terminal Syntax: The Final Communications of Humanity, became the foundation of human studies across Council space. His conclusion, that humans had destroyed themselves in a global conflict, was accepted as historical fact. The beauty of their tragedy, Zul often lectured, lies in how clearly we can see it coming through their own words. Their entertainment increasingly focused on apocalyptic themes. Their news broadcast documented escalating conflicts. Then at the peak of their development, silence. The final transmission simply states, "We'll be right back after these messages." They never returned. The study of humanity's rise and fall became a cautionary tale, taught to developing civilizations throughout Council space. Some species even incorporated human phrases into their religions, believing that the last words of a vanished species carried mystical significance. Then came the Theros expedition. Dr. Lara Wilson, lead xenoarchaeologist for the United Earth Exploration Corps, carefully extracted a small metallic object from the ruins on Theros 4. "What is it?" asked Commander Miguel Ortiz, keeping watch as the rest of the team secured the perimeter of the abandoned alien structure. "Some kind of data storage device," Wilson replied, turning it over in her gloved hands. "Similar to what we found on Proxima b, but more advanced. The symbols here match the language samples we recovered from the Tau Ceti outpost." Ortiz nodded. "So our mysterious friends were here too. Any idea when? Based on the decay rate of the synthetic materials? I'd say about 300 years ago." Wilson carefully placed the artifact in a containment field. "What's interesting is that they seem to have been studying us. Us, humans. Look at these inscriptions." She gestured to the wall where alien script surrounded images that were unmistakably from Earth. The pyramids of Giza, the Manhattan skyline, scenes from old television broadcasts. "They thought we were extinct." Ortiz stared at the images. "Well, that might explain why we haven't encountered any living aliens despite all these ruins. They don't know we survived and expanded." Wilson's expression turned serious. "Or maybe they do now and they're watching us. This site was abandoned in a hurry. Look at the tools left behind, the half-eaten food preserved in these stasis fields. Something scared them off. You think it was us? The discovery that the supposedly extinct humans were very much alive and exploring the stars. Wouldn't you be frightened if the ghosts you'd been studying suddenly showed up on your doorstep?" Unknown to the human explorers, their discovery had triggered silent alarms. Across Council space, emergency protocols activated. The impossible had happened. Species 7219 had returned from extinction. Present day. In the Grand Council chamber, Ambassador Reed finished his presentation. "We did not deceive you," he stated firmly. "We simply continued our development while you drew incorrect conclusions about us. We have been exploring space for over 2 centuries, establishing colonies in our solar system and beyond. It was only when we discovered your outpost on Theros IV that we realized intelligent alien life not only existed, but had been studying us under a profound misapprehension." High Arbiter Vrax leaned forward, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber floor. "If what you say is true, then the fault lies not with your species but with our scholars. However, this raises disturbing questions. How extensive is your presence in space? What technologies have you developed? Why have you approached us now, after silently observing us for years?" Reed exchanged glances with his colleagues. "We come seeking peaceful recognition and exchange. As for our capabilities," and he paused, "we believe in showing rather than telling." With a subtle gesture from Reed, the chamber's lights flickered momentarily. The enormous view screens that surrounded the council chamber suddenly displayed images from across council space. Military installations, classified research facilities, private governmental chambers, places no outsider should have access to. "We have been watching you as well," Reed said quietly. We could have remained hidden, continued our observation. Instead, we chose to introduce ourselves properly. The message was clear. Humanity was far more advanced and more aware of. Aliens studied an ancient human language for centuries. Until humanity returned, the closed emergency session of the Galactic Council's inner circle descended into chaos. 12 of the most powerful beings in known space argued, vehemently as holographic displays showed human ships appearing seemingly out of nowhere near critical council installations. They've been watching us for decades, shouted Representative Mock, her crystalline form flashing with agitation. While we studied their ancient broadcasts, they were studying our active communications. Senior linguist Pelduro slammed his appendage against the table. This is outrageous. My entire academic career, 5 centuries of scholarship, based on a misinterpretation. The renowned expert on human civilization trembled with rage. His best-selling translation of what he'd believed was humanity's final message, "We are finished," had actually been a simple television announcement, stating we will return, hi. Arbiter Vrax raised his massive appendages for silence. The humans remain in the diplomatic wing. They've made no aggressive moves beyond their demonstration of surveillance capabilities, which is threat enough, hissed Security Director Narrett. How did they penetrate our system so thoroughly without detection? Even the silicate consciousness cannot breach our quantum encryption. The chamber doors parted, admitting a hunched figure that moved with the slow deliberation of extreme age. The assembled leaders immediately fell silent as Professor Runath, the galaxy's oldest living scholar of comparative xenology, approached the central podium. I have spent, the ancient alien wheezed, 347 years studying what we believed were humanity's final cultural transmissions. I alone argued against the extinction theory. His breathing apparatus hissed and bubbled. I was ridiculed, demoted, my funding revoked. Yet here we are. He activated a personal device projecting images of ancient human entertainment broadcasts. What Dr. Zool interpreted as final death throes of civilization, I recognized as fiction, dramatized narratives for entertainment. These humans didn't document their extinction. They imagined possible futures as creative exercises. The security director snorted. This academic debate is irrelevant now. The question is what to do about these humans who have infiltrated council space while we remained ignorant of their existence. Professor Runath fixed the security director with his 3 primary eyes. On the contrary, understanding their psychology through their fictions may be our only advantage in these negotiations. 5 days earlier, at the prestigious Galactic University of Anthropological Studies on planet Theros, Professor Runath had been teaching his sparsely attended seminar on alternative interpretations of human communication patterns. While most academics accepted Professor Zool's extinction theory, Runath had always maintained skepticism. Consider this transmission, he told his 6 students displaying an ancient human broadcast. Dr. Zool translates this as, the final battles rage as their world burns. But observe the contextual markers. He highlighted elements of the scene. This is clearly labeled as Game of Thrones, season finale. The word game indicates simulation or fiction, not reality. The humans were creating entertainment, not documenting their demise. A student raised a tentacle. But Professor, if the humans didn't go extinct, where have they been for the past 3 centuries? Before Runath could answer, the university's emergency system activated. All screens displayed the same message. Contact confirmed with living human specimens. All xenological faculty report to Central Administration. As the students buzzed with excitement, Runath stood frozen, vindication and terror competing in his mind. After centuries of academic isolation, he had been proven right. But what would that mean for galactic society? Across campus, Dean Vexora paced her office, 4 of her 6 limbs clasped behind her back. Her best-selling translation of human religious texts had made her wealth and reputation. Now a priority message from Central Command revealed those texts had actually been something called situation, comedies. Her stomach cavities churned with dread. She opened her classified terminal and accessed the live feed from the human diplomatic vessel that had appeared in orbit around Theros 3 hours ago. The images showed bipedal creatures with varied skin tones, all wearing similar blue uniforms. They moved with purposeful efficiency, completely unaware of how thoroughly their existence demolished centuries of xenological scholarship. The door chime sounded. "Enter," she snapped. Professor Runath shuffled in, his ancient eyes gleaming with barely suppressed excitement. "I suppose you've come to gloat," Vexora said bitterly. "On the contrary, Dean, I've come to offer my assistance. The Council will need every expert on human culture, regardless of our past disagreements." Vexora gestured to the live feed. "What do we actually know about them? Everything in our databases is clearly suspect now." Runath moved closer to the screen. "We know they are adaptable, creative, and patient. They discovered our observation posts, realized we had misunderstood them, and instead of immediately correcting us, they watched and learned. A deeply concerning quality," Vexora murmured. "Or a pragmatic one," Runath countered. "Consider. They found themselves in a galaxy with multiple advanced species who had fundamentally misunderstood their nature. Rather than reveal themselves immediately, they took time to understand the situation." The Dean's communication panel chimed. "The Council requires our presence immediately. They're assembling all human experts for emergency consultation." "All human experts," Runath repeated with a wheezing laugh. "After today, I wonder if any of us deserve that title." Within hours, the news had spread across Council space. Religious groups that had incorporated human wisdom into their doctrines fell into crisis. The sacred final words of humanity turned out to be advertising slogans and television catchphrases. On 17 worlds, riots erupted between scholarly factions arguing over the implications. Professor Zul faced the most dramatic fall. His seminal work on human extinction narratives had influenced Council policy for decades. Now, facing irrefutable evidence of living humans, he retreated to his private chambers, refusing all communication. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic vessel Endeavour orbiting Theros, Communications Officer Diana Wells monitored the chaotic alien reactions. "They're completely destabilized," she reported to Captain James Mercer. "Their religious channels are broadcasting emergency sermons trying to explain how humans can exist when their holy texts specifically describe our extinction." Mercer nodded, studying the tactical display. "Any military mobilization?" "Some defensive repositioning of their fleets, but nothing directly threatening. Mostly they seem paralyzed by confusion." Wells paused, reviewing new data. "Sir, they've requested that Ambassador Reed and his team return to the Council chamber. They're assembling their foremost human experts for the session." The captain allowed himself a tight smile. "Experts who've spent their careers studying fictional television shows and sports broadcasts, thinking they were historical documents." "Sir," Wells asked hesitantly, "why did Central Command wait so long to make contact? We've been observing their outposts for nearly 30 years. Mercer's expression grew serious. "Information advantage, Lieutenant. Every day we watched them without them knowing about us was another day to learn their technologies, languages, and weaknesses without revealing our own." He nodded toward the planet below. "And now that advantage is paying dividends." In the Grand Council chamber, Ambassador Reed and his team faced not only the Council leaders but a hastily assembled panel of 23 human experts from across Council space. Many appeared visibly distressed, clutching data pads containing careers' worth of now questionable research. High Arbiter Vrax began the session. "Ambassador Reed, we have brought our foremost scholars to assist with these discussions. They have dedicated their lives to understanding your species." Reed glanced at the assembled academics, his expression neutral. "I appreciate the gesture, Arbiter Vrax. However, I should note that our surveillance suggests most of these individuals have built careers on fundamental misunderstandings of human culture." A murmur ran through the alien scholars. "Nevertheless," Reed continued smoothly, "we welcome the opportunity to correct these misunderstandings and establish a more accurate foundation for future relations." Professor Runath stepped forward without permission, his ancient form trembling with excitement. "Ambassador, I am Professor Runath of the Galactic University. For centuries I have argued against the extinction narrative. Your fictional entertainment broadcasts were clearly labeled as such, yet my colleagues insisted on interpreting them as historical documents." Reed inclined his head. "Your insight does you credit, Professor. I have questions," Runath continued eagerly. "Your species' penchant for creating elaborate fictional scenarios, was this evolutionary? A survival adaptation? The thousands of potential futures you envisioned through your television programs, were these preparation for actual contingencies? Reed exchanged glances with his team. We simply enjoy stories, Professor. Entertainment, creativity, these are valued in our culture. But surely, interjected Dean Vexora, the elaborate nature of these creations served some deeper purpose. The resources devoted to them suggest significant cultural importance. Aliens studied an ancient human language for centuries, until humanity returned. The observation deck of the United Earth vessel Horizon offered a breathtaking view of the alien world below. Captain Jack Rivera stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the swirling emerald clouds of Jaxal Prime. 6 months ago, this planet had been merely a notation in intelligence reports, the birthplace of human studies in council space. Now it represented something far more significant, the first official diplomatic mission between humanity and the Galactic Council. Beautiful world, commented Science Officer Emma Diaz, joining him at the viewport. Methane atmosphere, silicon-based plant life, triple moons. Nothing like home. And yet they became obsessed with Earth, Rivera said. Spent centuries studying broadcasts that stopped reaching them 300 years ago. Wouldn't you be intrigued by messages from the dead? Diaz asked. Especially if those messages contained thousands of hours of reality shows and soap operas. Rivera smiled thinly. According to their scholars, Jersey Shore was a documentary about primitive human tribal structures. The ship's communication system activated. Captain, incoming transmission from the surface. The Jaxal High Council is ready to receive our delegation. Rivera nodded to Diaz. Time to meet our fans. The descent to Jaxal Prime required specialized environmental suits for the human delegation. The shuttle landed in a massive crystal dome specially constructed with an Earth-compatible atmosphere. Outside the transparent walls, crowds of Jaxal citizens pressed forward, eager for glimpses of the resurrected species. The reception hall inside the dome was a strange hybrid of alien architecture and attempted human design elements. Furniture clearly intended for human use sat awkwardly alongside Jaxal resting platforms. The walls displayed enlarged images from Earth broadcasts, scenes from news programs, entertainment shows and sports events, all labeled with scholarly annotations that were frequently, hilariously wrong. First Minister Tovak of the Jaxal meritocracy entered with a delegation of officials and academics. The tall, multi-limbed beings moved with a fluid grace despite the environmental suits they required in the oxygen-rich dome. Captain Rivera, the First Minister's translation device, rendered his complex speech patterns into English. This is an historic occasion. The first living humans to set foot on Jaxal Prime. Rivera stepped forward, following the diplomatic protocol established by Ambassador Reed. First Minister, we are honored by your welcome. Humanity looks forward to correcting the historical record and establishing true understanding between our peoples. The alien leader's upper limbs performed an elaborate gesture that Rivera's cultural briefing identified as indicating profound emotion. For generations, we studied what we believed were the final transmissions of a lost civilization. The documentary series we called The Bold and Beautiful suggested your species was plagued by complex mating rituals and identity confusion. Beside Rivera, Diaz suppressed a smile. We have prepared a special exhibition of our human studies collection, Tovak continued, our most sacred artifacts from Earth. The delegation was led through a series of chambers displaying items recovered from old Earth transmissions. Television programs played on loop, their alien subtitles often wildly misinterpreting the content. A special case contained what the Jaxal believed was the last known image of intact human civilization, a freeze frame from the series finale of Breaking Bad. Professor Cree, introduced as the facility's chief curator, guided them with obvious excitement. This chamber contains our most precious artifacts, actual objects from Earth itself. The room held display cases containing items that had been carried aboard early, human space probes, Voyager's golden records, components from various Mars rovers, and fragments of satellites. Each was reverently preserved and completely misidentified. A simple camera lens was labeled possible religious focusing device. When did you recover these? Asked Rivera. Our deep space archaeological vessels discovered them in the outer reaches of your home system, explained Cree. We assumed they were ejected during Whatever cataclysm ended your civilization, Rivera exchanged glances with his team. The aliens had been collecting human space debris for centuries, building an entire academic discipline around misinterpreted artifacts and broadcast signals. And this, Cree said with special reverence, leading them to the final chamber, is our most sacred human artifact. In a specialized containment field floated what appeared to be an ordinary smartphone from the early 21st century. The final communication device, Cree explained, recovered from the debris field around your third planet. Our scholars believe this was used by your leaders to transmit their final messages before extinction. Rivera stepped closer. It was indeed a smartphone, a commercial model from the 2020s. The screen was cracked but still showed a frozen image, a social media app open to a cat video. Your interpretation is not entirely accurate, Rivera said diplomatically. Back aboard the Horizon that evening, the human delegation debriefed. They've built their entire understanding of humanity on misinterpreted television and salvaged space junk, Security Chief Marcus Wong reported. And now they're facing an existential crisis because we showed up alive. The religious implications are particularly concerning, added cultural specialist Layla Nasser. 17 different alien faiths incorporated what they believed were humanity's final wisdom teachings. Now their prophets turn out to be fictional characters from sitcoms. Rivera rubbed his temples. Any security concerns from today's visit? Nothing immediate, Wong replied. But there's significant unrest on their information networks. Their academic community is in turmoil. Some are calling for all human studies to be purged from their records as an embarrassment. And others are suggesting that we aren't really humans at all, that we're some new species claiming the human identity to infiltrate council space. Rivera raised an eyebrow. That's a concerning development. The ship's AI interrupted. Captain, priority communication from Earth Command. A holographic display activated, showing Ambassador Reed from the Council headquarters. Captain Rivera, we've received disturbing intelligence. There appears to be a faction within the Council that views humanity's sudden appearance as a threat to established order. They're proposing quarantine measures against Earth. Based on what justification? Rivera asked. They're claiming we deliberately deceived the galactic community by allowing the extinction narrative to persist while we expanded through space. Reed's expression was grim. More concerning, there's evidence they're accessing our surveillance network. Someone is helping them locate our observation posts. A leak? One of ours? Unknown at this time. Proceed with the diplomatic mission, but be on high alert. Read out. As the transmission ended, Science Officer Diaz turned to Rivera. If they're finding our observation posts, that puts dozens of our people at risk across council space. Rivera nodded grimly. And it means someone with high-level access is working against us. 3 days later, Rivera's fears materialized. The Horizon received an emergency transmission from a human observation post on the outer moon of Theros. This is Research Station Theta. We're under attack by Council security forces. They know we're... The transmission cut off abruptly. Within hours, similar reports came in from across Council space. The carefully hidden human observation network that had monitored alien civilizations for decades was being systematically exposed and raided. In an emergency session aboard the Horizon, Rivera addressed his senior officers. Earth Command confirms that 12 observation posts have been compromised. 43 personnel are missing, presumed captured. How did they find the posts? Demanded Wong. Those locations were our most closely guarded secrets. Someone gave them access to our secure databases, Rivera said. The question is who and why. Communications Officer Haruki Tanaka raised his hand. Captain, I've been monitoring Council transmissions. They're calling this Operation Truth Recovery. The public justification is that humanity has been spying on Council space while pretending to be extinct. We never claimed to be extinct, Diaz protested. They assumed that on their own. Perception matters more than fact in diplomacy, Rivera responded. In their eyes, we allowed a falsehood to persist because it gave us an intelligence advantage. The ship's AI interrupted again. Captain, incoming transmission from Jaxel Surface Command. The First Minister requests your presence immediately. Trap? Asked Wong. Possibly, Rivera conceded. But refusing would only confirm their suspicions. Diaz, Wong, you're with me. The rest of you, Prepare the ship for emergency departure if necessary. The atmosphere in the Jaxal diplomatic dome had transformed completely. Gone were the eager academics and curious officials. Instead, Rivera's team was met by armed security forces and grim-faced government representatives. First Minister Tovak entered, flanked by officers wearing what appeared to be military insignia. Captain Rivera, the First Minister began without preamble. The Council has declared a security emergency regarding human activities in our territory. You are hereby notified that this diplomatic mission is suspended pending investigation. Aliens studied an ancient human language for centuries, until humanity returned. The DO detention facility beneath the Galactic Council headquarters hummed with energy fields designed to contain species with widely varying biological capabilities. Ambassador Thomas Reed sat alone in a cell calibrated for human biology, the transparent barrier giving him a clear view of the guards stationed outside, representatives of 3 different council species working in rotation. The door at the end of the corridor slid open, admitting Professor Runath. The ancient alien scholar moved slowly toward Reed's cell, his breathing apparatus wheezing with each step. Ambassador, Runath greeted him through the communication system. I regret these circumstances. Reed rose from his seat. Professor, have you come to study humanity in captivity now? Perhaps write a paper on our incarceration behaviors? The old academic's sensory stalks drooped. I've come because I believe a terrible mistake is being made. The Security Directorate is using this situation to advance a long-standing agenda against emerging species. And what agenda is that? Control. The Council has maintained peace for 11,000 years by carefully managing the development and integration of new civilizations. Runath moved closer to the barrier. Humanity represents something unprecedented. A species that developed in isolation, observed us before we knew they existed, and appears technologically competitive with established council members. Reed considered this. We pose a threat to their control. Precisely. The detention of your diplomatic missions across council space isn't about surveillance posts. It's about containing a disruptive force. The professor paused, his breathing labored. There's more. The Security Directorate has authorized a deep space expedition to your home system. Reed kept his expression neutral despite the alarm this news triggered. For what purpose? Officially, to establish direct diplomatic contact with your government. Unofficially, Runath's voice lowered. The expedition includes military vessels equipped with planet-scale weapon systems. In the Council's restricted archives, Dr. Maya Patel, Reed's xenolinguistics expert and covertly the mission's intelligence specialist, had managed to avoid detention by claiming academic status rather than diplomatic. Using credentials arranged through Professor Runath, she now searched the Council's most classified historical records. Access granted, Incident File 7219X, announced the archive system. Warning: Xenological extinction level event records restricted to alpha clearance. The display illuminated with data dating back thousands of years. Patel scanned quickly through the index of extinct civilizations until she found what she sought. Previous cases where the Council had encountered species that developed in isolation from the galactic community. The pattern was disturbing. Of 17 documented cases, 15 had ended with the same designation. Species contained through controlled integration. The bureaucratic language couldn't disguise the reality. These species had been deliberately limited in their expansion, their technologies regulated, their populations managed. Patel downloaded the data to her secure device, then searched for another term: ancient prophecy protocols. The system hesitated. Verification required for eschatological predictive modeling archives. She entered the override codes Runath had provided, codes that shouldn't have worked for a human user. The screen flashed, then displayed a simple message: access granted through executive authorization. What appeared next confirmed their worst suspicions. Millennia ago, the early council had encountered artifacts from a species they named the predecessors, a civilization that had apparently dominated the galaxy before any current species evolved intelligence. Among these artifacts were warning messages in thousands of languages, many still untranslated. One of these warnings, finally decoded 50 years ago, spoke of the silent watchers who observe from darkness before revealing themselves as either saviors or Destroyers, the Council's xenoprophecy. Division had flagged humanity's appearance as a potential match for this ancient prediction when the first observation post was discovered. That designation had triggered automated protocols, including authorization for preventative security measures. In Council bureaucracy, that was code for military intervention. Patel had seen enough. She needed to warn Reed immediately. As she moved to disconnect her device, the archive access panel suddenly locked down. Warning indicators flashed red. Security alert, unauthorized access detected. User identity compromised. The doors to the archive chamber sealed with a hiss of hydraulics. Patel heard security forces assembling outside. Her cover was blown. On Jaxal Prime, Captain Rivera and his team remained under protective custody in the diplomatic dome. Security Chief Wong had managed to jury-rig a communications device from components smuggled in their environmental suits, giving them limited contact with the horizon. Status? Rivera asked quietly as Wong finished a transmission. Not good, sir. Council security vessels have surrounded the ship. They're demanding our command codes to access our databases. And Acting Captain Flores is stalling, claiming command protocols require your biometric authorization. But they're getting impatient, Rivera nodded. Tell her to initiate Protocol Omega if they attempt forced entry. Sir, Diaz interjected, that would destroy the ship's primary systems. Better than letting Council security access our networks, Rivera replied grimly. If they break our encryption, every human outpost and colony could be compromised. The door to their quarters slid open, admitting a Jaxal security team. Captain Rivera, your presence is requested in Communication Chamber 3. The security team escorted Rivera through the facility to a secure room, where First Minister Tovak waited with a holographic communication system. Captain, Tovak said, his translator rendering his speech in clipped tones. The High Council requests your cooperation in a matter of urgent importance. The holographic system activated, displaying an image of a human woman Rivera didn't recognize. Captain Rivera, she began without preamble. I am Director Elizabeth Monroe of Earth Intelligence Division. I've been authorized to inform you that Earth Command has negotiated a provisional settlement with the Galactic Council regarding recent misunderstandings. Rivera kept his expression neutral despite his confusion. He had never heard of Director Monroe, and Earth's intelligence operations didn't use such an obvious title. I'm afraid I don't have you in my command database. Director, he replied carefully. The woman smiled thinly. As I'm sure you understand, Captain, certain divisions operate with compartmentalized visibility. The diplomatic situation has been escalated to emergency status, requiring direct intervention from my office. Rivera noted several inconsistencies in her manner and appearance that triggered his counterintelligence training. The insignia on her uniform was slightly misaligned. Her accent contained subtle variations that didn't match any Earth region. What settlement has been negotiated? He asked, playing along. Earth Command has agreed to provide access to our observation network in exchange for immediate release of all detained personnel. Monroe's expression remained fixed in an unnatural smile. You are instructed to provide First Minister Tovak with your command authorization codes for the Horizons database. I'll need verification through proper channels, Rivera responded. As per Protocol 47B, emergency directives require confirmation through at least 2 independent command authorities. Monroe's expression flickered with momentary confusion before resuming its fixed smile. Captain, perhaps I wasn't clear. This directive comes directly from Earth Central Command with the highest priority. Then they would have included the appropriate verification codes, Rivera countered. Without proper verification, I'm afraid I cannot comply with your request. The hologram flickered, Monroe's image distorting slightly before stabilizing. Captain Rivera, refusal to comply will be considered insubordination during a diplomatic crisis. The consequences would be severe. Rivera met her gaze steadily. Nevertheless, I must follow established protocols. I'm sure Director Monroe would understand the importance of proper verification procedures. The transmission abruptly terminated. First Minister Tovak's appendages rippled with what might have been agitation. Your cooperation would simplify matters considerably, Captain, the Jaxal leader said. I'm sure it would, Rivera agreed. Unfortunately, I cannot authenticate that communication as legitimate. You believe it was falsified? I believe verification exists for a reason, First Minister. Tovak studied him for a moment, then gestured to the security team. Return the captain to his quarters. As Rivera was escorted from the room, he noticed increased activity throughout the facility. Something had changed in the diplomatic equation, and not for the better. In her cell beneath the council archives, Dr. Maya Patel sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed in apparent meditation. The guards outside paid little attention to the seemingly docile human prisoner. They didn't notice her lips moving silently, subvocally activating the emergency communication implant beneath her skin. The signal, when transmitted, would be virtually undetectable by council technology. A quantum-encrypted burst using protocols developed specifically to bypass alien monitoring systems. The message was simple. Predecessor's protocol active. Omega authorized. Aliens studied an ancient human language for centuries, until humanity returned. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was filled to capacity. Representatives from over 800 species occupied the rising tiers, many attending remotely through holographic projections. The emergency session had been called with the highest priority classification, bringing diplomats rushing from across the galaxy. At the center of the chamber stood a single human figure, Ambassador Thomas Reed, somehow returned despite his detention. High Arbiter Vrax loomed over the proceedings, his massive form radiating barely contained fury. "This session will come to order," his amplified voice boomed. "Ambassador Reed, you stand before this council unauthorized. Security forces are attempting to locate the individual who facilitated your escape." Reed stood calmly, hands loosely clasped before him. "High Arbiter, members of the council, I appreciate this opportunity to address you directly. Time is of critical importance. You have no standing to address this assembly," interrupted Security Director Narret. "A council expedition has already departed for Earth to establish proper diplomatic protocols with your government." Reed's expression hardened. "You mean the expedition carrying planet-killer weapons? Is that standard diplomatic protocol?" Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many representatives appeared confused, their private communication systems lighting up as they demanded information from their governments. "That information is classified," Narret hissed. "Your access to those files constitutes further evidence of human espionage against the Council." "The truth cannot be classified away, Director," Reed responded. "I stand before this assembly to prevent a catastrophic mistake. The expedition approaching Earth is operating under false pretenses. If they arrive with hostile intent, they will encounter defenses beyond their expectation." High Arbiter Vrax's appendages rippled with color patterns. "Are you threatening this council, Ambassador?" "I am warning this council," Reed clarified. "Humanity has developed in isolation for centuries, just as many of your species did before contact. We have our own technologies, our own defenses, and our own understanding of the universe. A preemptive strike against Earth would trigger automatic response systems that could spread conflict throughout the sector." Before Vrax could respond, the chamber's communication system activated unexpectedly. A holographic image appeared beside Reed. Captain Jack Rivera, somehow broadcasting directly into the Council's secure network. "Members of the Galactic Council," Rivera began. "I am Captain Jack Rivera of the United Earth vessel Horizon. I speak to you from Jaxal Prime, where my diplomatic mission has been detained without cause." Security Director Narret frantically worked controls at his station. "This transmission is unauthorized. How are they breaching our security?" Rivera continued undeterred. "Council representatives, you have been misled. The recent actions against human diplomatic missions were not authorized by the full Council, but by a faction within your security apparatus." Another hologram materialized. Dr. Maya Patel, broadcasting from an unknown location. "I have accessed the Council's restricted archives," Patel announced. Security Director Narret has implemented protocols reserved for extinction-level threats based on a prophecy from an ancient, extinct civilization. This action was taken without full Council authorization. The chamber erupted in confusion. Representatives demanded explanations from the High Arbiter and Security Director, many rising from their seats in protest. High Arbiter Vrax's voice thundered over the chaos. "Silence. This disruption is further proof of human interference with Council systems. Security forces will—" He was interrupted by yet another unexpected holographic projection. This one showing Professor Runath. Honorable representatives, the ancient scholar began. I have spent centuries studying what we believed was a dead civilization. When living humans appeared, I rejoiced at the opportunity to finally understand them correctly. Instead, I watched as fear drove our leadership to treat them as a threat, rather than an opportunity. The old alien's breathing apparatus wheezed audibly. I have accessed the predecessor archives. The prophecy being used to justify military action against Earth has been deliberately mistranslated. The original text doesn't speak of destroyers but of challengers, species that would challenge our understanding of the galaxy. Security Director. Narret finally managed to terminate the unauthorized transmissions. The holograms flickered and disappeared, leaving only Ambassador Reed standing in the chamber. What you have just witnessed, Reed said into the sudden silence, is humanity's true capability. Not aggression but communication, not destruction but revelation of truth. He stepped forward, addressing the entire assembly. Representatives of the Galactic Council, humanity does not seek conflict. We seek understanding and cooperation, but we will not accept subjugation based on fear and misunderstanding. Reed activated a small device, projecting his own holographic display, a star map, showing the Council expedition en route to Earth alongside another fleet, moving to intercept it. Earth Defense Command has dispatched vessels to meet your expedition, Reed explained. They carry no weapons, only the truth, complete unfiltered records of human history, culture, and development. We offer transparency in place of suspicion. He looked directly at High Arbiter Vrax. The choice before this council is simple. Continue down the path of fear, or embrace the opportunity to truly know humanity as we are, not as your scholars imagined us to be. 3 days earlier, the Earth Defense Command Center beneath the Rocky Mountains had received the quantum encrypted warning from Dr. Patel. Emergency protocols activated instantly, bringing the planet's leadership together in crisis session. Fleet Admiral Laura Chen surveyed the assembled military and civilian leaders. The situation is clear. A Council expedition is en route to Earth with weapons capable of causing planetary-scale damage. Their apparent intent is to force Earth's integration into their governance system under threat of these weapons. Defense Minister Okonkwo shook his head. We've known about the Council for decades. Why move against us now? According to Dr. Patel's intelligence, they're operating under something called the Predecessor's Protocol, Chen explained. Apparently, an ancient prophecy warned about a species that would observe silently before revealing themselves. Some Council factions believe we fit this description. So they're attacking us because of a prehistoric horoscope? Someone asked incredulously. They're attacking because we developed beyond their control, corrected President Garcia. This prophecy merely gives them justification. Admiral Chen indicated the tactical display showing the approaching Council vessels. We have limited options. Direct military confrontation would be costly on both sides, even with our technological advantages. What advantages do we have? Asked the Science Minister. They don't know about the quantum communication network, Chen replied. They believe their expedition will arrive unannounced. They don't realize we've been monitoring their approach since they departed Council space. President Garcia studied the display thoughtfully. What if we turn their greatest misunderstanding to our advantage? They've spent centuries studying what they thought was human culture. Perhaps it's time they learned what humanity really is. In the Grand Council chamber, Ambassador Reed concluded his appeal. The expedition approaching Earth expects to find a divided, unprepared world that will surrender rather than face planetary devastation. Instead, they will find a unified human presence offering dialogue instead of conflict. The question is, what instructions will this council send them? High Arbiter Vrax conferred urgently with council leadership through private channels. The chamber remained tense, representatives watching the unfolding drama with rapt attention. Finally, Vrax addressed the assembly. This council will recess for 1 hour while we verify the claims made here today. Ambassador Reed will remain under guard within the chamber. As the representatives filed out, Reed noticed Professor Runath enter through a side entrance, somehow having made his way to the council headquarters despite helping Reed escape days earlier. The old scholar approached, escorted by security personnel who nevertheless treated him with obvious deference. Ambassador, Runath wheezed. Events are proceeding faster than anticipated. The communication protocols your species uses, They're based on quantum entanglement, aren't they? Reed neither confirmed nor denied it. Professor, I'm surprised to see you here. My age and status afford certain privileges, the alien replied. I surrendered voluntarily after ensuring your escape. The Council would not risk the political consequences of imprisoning their oldest living scholar without due process. Reed smiled slightly. A calculated risk. One of many I've taken lately. Runath's sensory stalks wavered with what might have been amusement. I've been granted permission to share something with you. He produced a small device and activated it, creating a privacy field around them that blocked monitoring devices. The Council is divided, the professor explained. Security Director Narrat's faction wants to classify humanity as a Level 1 threat and authorize immediate containment measures. But many representatives are disturbed by the discovery that the expedition was launched without proper authorization.